Andrea del Verrocchio, The Incredulity of Thomas. There was a sculpture that was by Donatello that was removed from a niche at Or San Michele. The judges of the Merchant Guild decided that they needed a new sculpture in this niche. The theme was associated with justice because it was the judges of the Merchant Guild. Now the issue is Verrocchio didn't have very much space because the niche was originally for one figure. So he's trying to fit in two figures. So he actually does a couple of things. He actually takes out the backs of these figures. So if you took this sculpture out of the niche, you would notice that there are basically holes where the backs of these two figures are. You can also see that Thomas's foot is actually right outside of the niche. You can see it in front of the flat column there. So this is the time Christ has come back. Thomas doubts that it is Christ. And so Christ is showing him his wounds in order to prove that, yes, this is Christ. You'll notice that Verrocchio has added a halo on Christ in this image. You'll also notice that we have some deeply folded robes around these figures. This is the Holy Trinity with the Virgin, St. John, and two donors by Masaccio. This originally stood in front of the tomb slab for the Lenzi family. We can see the skeleton lying on the sarcophagus. This is the tomb of Adam, which represents man's sins. You can see the words there in Latin. Translated, it says, "What I once was, you are. What I am, you will become." We also have the Trinity all being shown here. We have Christ on the cross. We have God the Father. And we have the dove of the Holy Spirit being illustrated. Now, interestingly enough, he has put these figures, along with Virgin Mary and St. John, inside a cathedral. So we can see the rounded barrel vault ceiling with its coffering and the columns of the cathedral there. And then on the exterior, we can see the two donors, the man and the woman who paid the money to Masaccio to create this piece. Now this is very big. It's again on the wall, the building there. And so it is actually 21 foot by 10 foot. Now let's go to the Brancacci Chapel in Florence. Felice Brancacci commissioned frescoes for his family's chapel in Santa Maria del Carmine, and most of them are depicting a life of Saint Peter. So many of these frescoes are created by Masaccio, but also another artist named Masolino, and some of them were also completed by Filippo Lippi. Now we're going to actually focus on a couple of pieces here. We can see that there are a wide variety from Adam and Eve. Again, the vast majority does focus on St. Peter, but obviously with Adam and Eve, we've got some other biblical stories also being illustrated here. So the first one to focus on is the tribute money. This is based on Matthew 17, verses 24 to 27. This is where Christ is instructing Peter to catch fish. We actually have a bit of continuous narration here. So we have several different views of what's happening. We can have the same scene, but in different time periods. So we have the first scene is in the center where we've got the tax collector. He's the guy in the short tunic. He is asking for money from Christ. Christ is instructing Peter to go catch a fish, open its mouth, and give the money to the tax collector. So in scene 2 is the far left corner here where we have Saint Peter doing just that. He is catching a fish, going to take the coin out to give to the tax collector, which we see in the far right. We have Peter giving the money to the tax collector. So we have scene 1 in the center, We have scene 2 on the far left, and we have scene 3 on the far right. One thing you might notice is the figures. We've got contrapposto stance, that S-shaped curve happening with these figures. You'll see that most of the color and most of the detail is on the figures. The background is all very gray, white, got some blues and yellows, but meant to kind of fade into the background there. As I said, we have some Adam and Eve. This is Adam and Eve being expelled from paradise. We can literally see the gates barely on the far left corner here. This is the gate of paradise, and you can see these kind of markings. Maybe that's the slamming of the door, or maybe it is God kind of yelling at them to get out. But we get the idea of motion, that they're being pushed out of paradise at this very moment. And we have the angel with his sword making sure that they do not try to go back. Here's another Masaccio piece. This is much more traditional. This is a Madonna enthroned. We've seen several of these now. This is part of a much larger piece. So this was a central portion. You can see where part of the frame would have been with the arch there. This was for a chapel in a Carmelite church. We've got the traditional gold background. We've got angels, lute players, and of course the Virgin holding the Christ child. So for just a moment, we're going to step aside and talk a little bit about what's happening in Florence at this time. We have a monk, Girolamo Savonarola. He's a Dominican monk, and he is becoming very, very popular. He is condemning the excesses of Florence. He is condemning pagan images. He is conducting book burnings and bonfires where many of the artists are eliminating some of their paintings. But he is getting a lot of power. He eventually takes control over Florence and kicks the Medici family out. Remember, we've had the Medici family for quite a while. They were getting their money from trade and from banking. They were the bankers to the Pope. Cosimo de' Medici was originally driven out in 1433, but he returned just a year later. Then we had Piero, Cosimo's son, and then we also have Giovanni, another one of Cosimo's sons. Lorenzo the Magnificent was Piero's son. We're going to talk more about him later. So the Medici family are temporarily out, but definitely not counted out. We are going to see them returning. Fra Angelico. This is the Annunciation. This is at San Marco in Florence. Cosimo de' Medici gave the Dominicans money to build a convent for friars in Florence in 1436. Fra Angelico is a nickname. It means angelic friar. His real name was Fra, or friar, Giovanni da Fiesole. So Giovanni was the name he took when he became a monk, and he is from the town of Fiesole. When a person becomes a monk, they choose a new name when they enter the monastery. So his name would have been Fra Giovanni da Fiesole, but we know him as Fra Angelico, or angelic friar. This is the Annunciation. Now, this is the moment where the Archangel Gabriel comes to Mary and tells her she is with child. We have Archangel Gabriel with his beautiful wings. Look at the colors in the wings. We're very much used to seeing the white, fluffy feathers on angel wings, but that's not always been the case. A lot of times we see these very beautiful, very colorful wings, because of course that's what we were seeing on the birds. Now you'll also notice that the figures, the angel and Mary, both are very large compared to the architecture. If they were to stand fully up, they would be hitting their head on the ceiling here. The other thing with the architecture I want you to notice is that the arches are really helping us to create a sense of depth. Those arches really make the sense that this is going back into space. We also have a wonderful little garden there in the back left corner. Now you might notice that there's some actually words there at the very bottom. I know it's a little hard to see. This is an inscription calling on the friars who pass by to say an Ave Maria. Palazzo Medici Riccardi in Florence. This is by Michelozzo de Bartolomeo. Bartolomeo had worked with Ghiberti and Donatello. This is for Cosimo de' Medici. This is one of his houses. He had actually originally contracted with Brunelleschi, but decided he didn't like Brunelleschi's design. The windows on the ground floor were actually added by Michelangelo in 1516. It was then extended later on by the Riccardi family in the 17th century, hence the addition of the Riccardi name to the palazzo's name. Now here I want you to notice that the three levels look very distinct. So at the bottom level, it's very rough hewn stone. We don't have as many windows, but the second floor, much smoother. We can still see the differentiation of the bricks, much smoother, much more windows. Third floor, we have very smooth along with the windows. Now, partly, this is because of the way buildings were created. So buildings, the first floor, the ground floor, was typically the most public of the spaces. This is where more people are going to be coming in. We're going to have more private areas on the second floor. Maybe there's going to be a ballroom or a space that people can come, but not everyone. And then the private areas are going to be on the top floor. So the private areas, the bedrooms, those type of areas are going to be on the top. The other thing I want you to notice is the ornamentation here, there at the corner of the building. You can see we have these balls on this shield. This references the Medici coat of arms. Basically, this is showing who owns this building. We have that even today. We have little welcome by the Smiths family, little signs today. Kind of the same thing. And this is the courtyard. So one of the very important elements here is this open courtyard. So for multiple reasons, you're going to see multiple courtyards in a lot of these old buildings. This is to keep them cool. Don't have central heat and air. So we need to have these spaces to help cool down the spaces. You'll also notice that we've got some statuary, and we'll typically also oftentimes have pools or fountains, oftentimes to collect rainwater as well. These are very common areas for this time period. You'll also notice the emblem with the balls right here again. So the Medicis have their symbol everywhere showing whose house you were in. Donatello's David. Now, Donatello, remember, he trained under Ghiberti. His David is the first freestanding, life-sized nude since antiquity. It was originally on a high pedestal in the courtyard of the Medici Palace. This was created by the lost wax method. The image of David is very important for the Florentines. They see David as this great symbol of a good human being and good ruler. He is the patron of the city of Florence, and again, a symbol of Florentine civic virtue. So you will notice that this David is nude. He's also very young. So we have the youthful David, a David who is an early teenager maybe. The only armor we see are his boots and his helmet, and of course the sword. You will also notice that David is standing on Goliath's head. So this has happened after he has slain Goliath. So this is the aftermath. He has slain Goliath, so you can see that we've got this play of a smile on his lips, that he is happy with how this turned out. He still has a stone in his left hand, though. You'll notice we've got a stone here, and then we have the sword in the other hand, the sword that has just decapitated Goliath. So remember this, because we will be coming back. We've got a few Davids to compare. And so this is one of the first ones. So Donatello's David. You can see the Goliath, I think, a little bit better in this one. Madonna and Child with the Birth of the Virgin by Fra Filippo Lippi. This is a tondo. A tondo is a circular painting. The Florentine banker Leonardo Bartolini Salimbeni commissioned this piece. So the central focus is the Virgin Mary with the Christ child. We can see them in the front center part of this painting. Christ is picking seeds out of a pomegranate. A pomegranate was an emblem of eternal life as well as fertility. As you can see, we have a lot going on in the background. So next we go to the left here. We have this scene. This is the birth of Virgin Mary. So this is Saint Anne giving birth to Mary. This is located in a upper middle class, upper merchant class household. You can tell that by the furnishings. He is utilizing the grid on the ceilings to create a sense of depth. And then on the right, we have a separation with these walls, and on the right we have another little scene. And this is Saint Anne and her husband Joachim at the Golden Gate in Jerusalem, after the angel of the Lord has appeared to them separately and promised them a child. In this case, we have scene 1 here on the right, scene 2 of the actual giving birth of Mary on the left, and of course Mary giving birth herself in this central section. So again, a continuous narration. The Battle of San Romano by Paolo Uccello. Uccello, or Paolo di Tonto, trained under Ghiberti. Now Uccello, again another nickname that stuck. Uccello means bird. This is a nickname because he was a big animal lover. Now this is one of 3 panels depicting the battle between Florence and Siena in 1432. Florence's victory led to Cosimo de' Medici's consolidation and resurgence of power. Now Florence in this battle is being led by Niccolo de Tolentino. He's the guy on the white horse. Now the guy who actually paid to have this created, who commissioned this painting, was Leonardo Bartolini Salimbeni. He commissioned this for the Medici Palace, so we're trying to basically butter up the Medicis. We're trying to get in good, so we're going to have these beautiful paintings being created. This is again focusing on the Florentine victory over the Sienese, or Siena. We have a low viewpoint. The bottoms of the paintings were hung around 7 feet from the ground, so you were meant to kind of look there, the bottom of the piece looking up. And the background actually links the panels together. Now you'll notice that all of the weapons and lances and even some of the bodies on the ground are in a grid-like pattern, again creating a sense of depth here. The armor was covered in gold and silver foil, so it really sparkled in the light. So the knot of Solomon is actually on the banner of Tolentino. Again, he's the guy with the big red hat on the white horse. Primavera by Sandro Botticelli. Primavera means spring. Botticelli trained with Verrocchio. This was probably commissioned for a wedding. This is Venus in her sacred grove. She is the central figure. We have Eros flying overhead. On the left, we have the 3 Graces, as well as Hermes, or the Roman god Mercury. On the right, we have Zephyr, the west wind. He is grasping Chloris, who then transforms into Flora, the goddess of flowers. This again was for members of the Medici household. The Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli. So Venus is floating to shore, and she is being greeted by a couple of figures here. The woman on the right with the floral cape or coat, she's probably one of the Graces, or possibly the season, like spring. The robe there is covered in cornflowers. On the other side, we have Zephyr, the west wind, and he is accompanied by Chloris or Flora. This was created for the Medicis, hung in their villa. So this is, as the title says, right after Venus was created. So she was born from the sea where Saturn, or Kronos, through his father's genitals after castrating him. And so she was just automatically kind of born from the sea, hence why she is floating on this giant seashell. On the right-hand side, we see an orange grove, similar to one we had seen in the previous painting. Also, around the figure that is possibly Spring, the woman on the right, she has a necklace of evergreen myrtle, which represents everlasting love. At Orange Grove, the blossoms and leaves were actually tipped with real gold. The Birth of the Virgin by Domenico Ghirlandaio. This is one of the artists that trained Michelangelo. These are important women. The woman in profile in the center was the daughter of the patron, Ludovico Tornabuoni. Her name was Lucrezia Tornabuoni, which was Lorenzo de' Medici's mother. So important people here. So this is the birth of the Virgin. So St. Anne giving birth. So we have St. Anne here on the bed. We have the Virgin Mary. Here is a baby. But we also have a scene of, again, St. Anne and Joachim here on the staircase. An Old Man and a Young Boy by Domenico Ghirlandaio. We believe it's probably the grandfather and grandson, but the names have unfortunately been lost. His nose is disfigured by rosacea, skin disorder, very much in the Northern European style of details. We've got the window there on the right side, got 3/4 view of the face. So lots of details here. Simple, but lots of details. You have a period of prosperity with Lorenzo de' Medici, or Lorenzo the Magnificent. This is a bust by Verrocchio of him. But unfortunately, Lorenzo does die in 1492, and his son Piero takes charge. This is not good. Piero is not very diplomatic. He is very impetuous. The bank actually failed in 1494. We have an unstable economy. We have invading armies from France and Spain. All of these things are coming together. We actually have an uprising in Florence later in 1494, and they expel the Medicis. This is when Savonarola takes full control of the government. So as I said, he had been getting a lot of power and authority, and so he takes full control, pushes the Medicis completely out, and this is whenever we have those bonfires. Double portrait of Battista Sforza and Federico da Montefeltro by Piero della Francesca. So this is a diptych, 2 parts. Piero della Francesco, he actually was originally a mathematician, and you can see that there is a mathematical quality of his work. The perspective is very exacting. He really does some brilliant colors and textures. So he is showing the Count and his wife facing each other. He is showing Federico on the side specifically for a reason. You might also notice that there's kind of something awkward about Sforza's nose. He had actually lost his right eye in a jousting accident. Because of this, because of how powerful he was also a military leader. He wanted to be able to have as much vision as possible, so he actually had the doctors take out part of his nose, the bridge of his nose, so he had better line of sight with his one remaining eye. So he is being shown that way because of this disfigurement. Now his wife, if you'll notice the background on her piece tends to have more of a shadow. This is because she had recently died of fever just 2 years previously. She's also on the left-hand side, which is a place of honor. A lot of people will talk about Battista Sforza's military prowess and his conquering of areas. He also had one of the largest libraries and had his own scriptorium. And this is actually the back of that same painting. This has the personification of various virtues. This is Saint Sebastian by Andrea Mantegna. Mantegna was court painter to the Gonzago family. This is a royal family that ruled Mantua, which is an area in North Italy. Saint Sebastian was an early Christian martyr. Now, his story is that he was shot through with arrows and then left to die. Now, a woman actually found him, nursed him back to health, and what did he do? Immediately, as soon as he got better, he went to the Roman ruler again and tried to tell him again about how he is wrong in obeying these Roman gods. This time, he is clubbed to death. So he does eventually die, but he does survive the arrows. That's an important part. Because of this, Saint Sebastian was often invoked for the plague. And because of this, he became very, very popular during this time period. We have the plague again coming and going and coming and going. He is attached to this classical column. It's part of a ruins. The artist's signature is on the left-hand side in Greek. Also want to point out that we've got the archers that are here on the roadway as they're kind of walking away. So those are the archers. They shot him, they figure they're done, and then they walk away. Now we are moving to Venice. This is Cado Oro. This was for Marino Quattrini. This is on the Grand Canal. The title means House of Gold, because there was actual gold leaf on the facade. Again, we've got on the ground floor, this is the shipping center and a warehouse space. Second floor, this is a large reception hall. The third floor, again, this is the private area. You'll notice that we have a lot of Islamic influence in Venice, a lot of decoration on these beautiful buildings on the canal. We have Giovanni Bellini. This is Madonna and Saints. Bellini was Mantegna's brother-in-law. This is Sacra Conversation, or Sacred Conversation, Mary with the Saints. This is for the Benedictine convent San Zaccaria. She's Queen of Heaven on a raised throne surrounded by St. Peter, St. Catherine, St. Lucy, and St. Jerome. Unfortunately, the painting had been cut to fit the present frame, and the piece added there on top, so that's why it looks so awkward there. We have a stable pyramid of the figures, as we can see. Now we have a new chapel being built for the Pope. This is the Sistine Chapel. We will obviously come back to this. This was named the Sistine Chapel after Pope Sixtus IV, or Sixtus della Rovere. We have Pope Sixtus commissioning frescoes for the walls, depicting the life of Moses, Christ, and other Old and New Testament stories. We have Botticelli, Ghirlandaio, and others painting these. But we're going to look here at Pietro Vannucci, also named Perugino. We know him as Pietro Perugino. This is the delivery of the keys. It's there in the Sistine Chapel. So this is Christ handing the keys to the kingdom of heaven to St. Peter. This is giving him the authority of the church. This is very important. Now, we also have some important things happening in the midground. In the midground, on the left, we have the tribute money, and on the right, we have the attempted stoning of Christ. And in the background, we have the two triumphal arches and the small chapel. The triumphal arches were modeled after the Roman Arch of Constantine, and the chapel is the ideal church from Alberti's treatise on architecture. It also has mathematically exact perspective that we can see here. All of the lines of sight go directly to the doorway of this ideal church. So again, there's a lot of focus here on the church, both literally and figuratively. So we have Christ giving the keys of the church to Peter. We have this ideal church in the background. All of this is showing how the Pope is the spokesperson, if you will, for God on earth. It is supporting the Pope's position.